Well, I think you should start at a much higher level. Okay? We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum. And the Trump administration and myself, we are here to make a very clear point. Globalization has failed the West and the United States of America. It's a failed policy. It is what the WEF has stood for, which is export, offshore, far shore, find the cheapest labor in the world, and the world is a better place for it. The fact is, it has left America behind. It has left the American workers behind. And what we are here to say is that America First is a different model, one that we encourage other countries to consider, which is that our workers come first. We can have policies that impact our workers. Sovereignty is your borders. You're entitled to have borders. You shouldn't offshore your medicine. You shouldn't offshore your semiconductors. You shouldn't offshore your entire industrial base and have it be hollowed out beneath you. You should not be dependent for that which is fundamental to your sovereignty on any other nation. And if you're going to be dependent on someone, it darn well better be your best allies. Okay? And so that is a different way of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries.
Welcome, new Templars. I'm 𝕯𝖚𝖚 aka 𝕯𝖚𝖚 the Map Maker. So we've got some news to discuss tonight. Big things happening out of Davos 2026 with both Trump, Howard Lutnick, and Scott Bessent delivering a beatdown to the globalists, and it was a beautiful thing. And you just saw pretty much Howard Lutnick's beatdown, but we're going to go through a lot of Trump's quotes from that, and I'm basically very satisfied with it. You know, I feel like myself and everyone from the MAGA base was very well represented by an uncompromising administration that has just turned this WEF upside down completely from what it used to be since 2018 through 2020. And now this administration has set an entirely new agenda for what was once the very epicenter of the globalist agenda. And many, many countries have come on board with this new agenda, including Argentina and Italy. You know, we have many allies that are taking up this more nationalist national policy, and all of the previous globalist policies and Green New Deal policies are essentially a joke now and being made fun of. And even Klaus Schwab is gone, the leader. Now, he did lead it for 55 years and was in his like 80s or 90s. I'm not sure his exact age, but he was a little old to be leading it, but he's been replaced with Larry Fink of BlackRock now. And even Larry Fink's opening to the WEF was quite interesting to listen to. When I was trying to find Trump's speech on Wednesday morning, I was finding fake streams of his speech from 2018. But in that process, I did start listening to the opening of the entire event, which I would suggest everyone listen to that as well, of Larry Fink opening this event for the first time as the chairman of the WEF. And some of the things he says, it's like, what? Like, he opens it with, how is this group even still relevant? Like, no one trusts us anymore. And so it's like not what you would expect to hear from the opening of the World Economic Forum. So we're going to go through a lot of that tonight. And by the way, I do have Rumble open. Let's see, we have 22 watchers on Rumble right now. So if anyone has questions or comments on Rumble, I am watching the chat this time, and I'm watching the chat on YouTube as well. You see Tiffany's on here. So I'm going to try to watch all the chats at once, but I'm a little bit new to watching the chats, plus looking at my own notes and running this, and so we're going to do our best here, but we're working up to Nick Fuente's level where you have the robot voice that reads the chats for you, but we're not quite there yet. And so also in this video, I'm going to talk some about Minneapolis and the protests that have been happening stateside. As you see in the title, Karens are crashing out. I absolutely love the term that I believe Jesse Waters coined, kamikaze Karens. And that's really what it's become. I mean, these far leftists, the men and the women, seem to really have a death wish and have no survival instincts either. So we're going to look into that a little bit. And then I have a couple other sort of random points for this video, some things about Japanese bond markets, and then some Maha news, some health and wellness news, and then ending it with some entertainment news to talk about what's been on my Twitter feed. You know, I look at so many different news sites, including Twitter. I feel like I get the best news from Twitter, but at the same time, I want to also say that I have noticed that my X feed has basically been turning more and more into garbage lately, what you would consider goy slop. While Grok is still espousing very much woke ideologies and condemnation of things like anti-Semitism and racism, whoever's controlling the algorithm of my main feed on X seems to have gone full white supremacist or white nationalist. And, you know, this like my main, it's not my following feed, but my suggested feed on X has become like extremely white supremacist, extremely racist, just glorifying all this, you know, violence, and it's becoming more like, well, not more like more like Instagram in the way that it's goy slop, but like radicalized far-right Nazi goy slop. And so that's unfortunate because, you know, I really like to rely on X as a good source to see, you know, breaking news. A lot of times the news does break on X, like when Trump was traveling to Davos. Some of you may have heard that his plane flew an hour east and then did a U-ey and went back. And a lot of people were like, what the hell is going on? It's like stuff like that. You hear it first on X when it's like 10 minutes old. And I don't even know where the people on X get this information. You know, I would love to be the ones who originate some of these tweets that's like breaking news, but it's like some people break this news on X before it's even in the mainstream media, which is interesting. And I think that's essentially because a lot of these news breaking accounts on X are actually controlled directly by this administration. You know, these people have contacts within the administration, and so they break things, especially related to Trump and the activities of this administration, before they're reported in the mainstream news. And so in many ways, X is the front line of the news these days. Also, since it is a white hat control platform, with Elon Musk having completely changed the algorithm and the content since he took over. But, you know, unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of static in the feed. And, you know, maybe it's just filler because there can't always be a big breaking story that is basically what I'm looking for. It's like when I'm spending this time scrolling on there. But, you know, it's kind of sad to see it leaning towards these more extremist ideologies. And I'm not sure what they're trying to do to me. Are they trying to turn me into white supremacist? I mean, or just make me be more public about it, start using the N-word in my videos? Like, I don't know, but it's a little bit concerning. But anyways, you do, when things happen, you find them on X. But it's like, what I'm saying is that I'm seeing a lot more, you know, concerning content filler-wise. And of course, I block the accounts that's like fight clubs and like just people, like, you know, random acts of violence and stuff. Like, I don't want to see people, you know, getting bodily harm on my newsfeed. It's not why I'm on X. It's to see like WWF. But anyways, that's just a little note about how we collect this data. You know, of course, I'm also checking all these other different news sites as well to see what's going on. But in general, I would say the past few weeks since my last video has been a bit of a holding pattern, and even a lot of just confirmations of things that, you know, were already apparent 2 weeks ago, such as Trump's executive order regarding BlackRock owning single-family homes. That went from a tweet to an executive order. And as he confirmed in his WF speech, that is going to be something that he's trying to get Congress to pass a law to make it a permanent resolution. So essentially, once again, proving that channels like this and others in the truth community are just way ahead of the curve. Just following Trump's Truth Social feed is way ahead of the curve. Things that he just suggests there end up being executive orders, end up being congressional bills that get passed and come to law and come to reality. And so that's kind of what all this awakening is about. And building our consciousness is understanding the current state of the world so that we can make logical predictions of the future and plan our lives to benefit from the future, essentially, which is what a lot of this 𝕯🐦 information is about. And we are going to briefly mention Brad Garlinghouse and what he said at the Davos Forum. And we'll bring up some pictures here. We have obviously a slideshow to go with this. Now, this is, I think, what most people were hoping for was Brad Garlinghouse and Trump to come out together and announce 𝕯🐦. This seemed like it might have been a good opportunity to do something like that. I'm going to close Restream, which means I won't be able to see the YouTube comments anymore because it lags when I have that open. But yeah, so as we were leading up to this World Economic Forum, people were speculating, will there be a huge announcement or not? I would say, well, we will get to one thing that may be a somewhat huge announcement, but there was not a huge financial announcement, I would say. Of course, it's very promising to see Brad Garlinghouse at the World Economic Forum. He didn't do a solo speech, but he was part of a panel regarding crypto with Brian Armstrong of Coinbase and a few others. And we're just hearing more and more talk. We also heard talk from Larry Fink, the now chairman of WEF, talking about tokenizing all assets and just using literally all of the same verbiage that Ripple has been using for years. So in a way, while a lot of these people who talk about crypto, including Trump, don't really like to mention XRP and Ripple specifically, they're using all the verbiage that comes straight out of, I would say, exclusively Ripple's, press releases and things that Brad Garlinghouse has said for years in terms of talking about tokenizing assets, tokenizing the entire economy, that the banks are going to get left behind when crypto comes online here in the near future. And so it's looking very promising for the XRP Ripple future that we've talked about. However, we have not seen any price action yet. Since last July, it's gone down and then it's sort of been a flat line. But, Trump also mentioned the Clarity Act in his speech, talking about he's very eager to sign it. And, that's going to bring presumably a pump to the crypto market. Now, sometimes when we're expecting a pump, it ends up being, pump the news and then sell the actual news, or pump the hype and then sell the news. But I think it's like, I'm tired of saying this, but, once we already got the pump from the Genius Act back in July. And I believe, XRP will pump. It's clearly going to pump sometime this year. Now, if I'm just looking at the chart of XRP, I would say, because it has pumped so recently, it looks like we may be in for more of a longer flat line and then a pump coming later in the year. But you just never know. It could be a shorter flat line. It depends on which part of the chart's history in the past you're really looking at. If you're looking at back in the 2017, 2018 pump, we did see a pump and then a shorter flat line and then a much bigger pump. And so, we could see the price rise shortly after the Clarity Act, or I would say later in the year, maybe in the fall or something. But either way, there is no Bitcoin representative at WEF. I don't believe there's an Ethereum representative at WEF. And neither of those tokens use a lot of this verbiage of tokenizing assets. And they're not being used by the banks currently to do these international monetary transfers, which is what Ripple was built for. And so I've been following, really deeply everything going on with Ripple and the crypto news. One of my favorite channels now to watch, along with the Q-related stuff, is 𝕯𝖊𝖚𝖚 on YouTube, who talks with on every Monday. He speaks with Versan, They both like, he has such a funny accent. But anyways, like they're really kind of like on the cutting edge of XRP. If you guys want to check that out and learn a lot more about XRP, I would recommend that channel, Edo XRP on YouTube. And Versange's channel is Black Swan Capitalist. So that's one of my favorite shows now, along with like Mike King on News Treason and Patriot Underground. I go for the deepest perspective. You know, when you've been in this truth movement for as long as I have, you know, starting with Destroying the Illusion back in 2018 or 2017, actually, and then finding out about X22 some years later, it's like you go through the different levels of, I wouldn't say hierarchy, because, you know, some of the less conscious channels have much more subscribers, like Nick Fuentes, like X22. You know, X22 is almost at least 500,000, if not 1 million subscribers just on Rumble. But, you know, you're not getting the deepest level of decodes on those types of channels, especially not Nick Fuentes. But funnily, you know, Nick Fuentes was talking about, he was making fun of Candace Owens for talking about a project Looking Glass. And, you know, I just think all these channels are controlled by the military, to be completely honest with you. And when he's making fun of someone for talking about Project Looking Glass, what he's actually doing is exposing all of his groypers, which is his followers, to these much deeper, you know, secret projects and secret technologies. Because like a lot of these people that listen to people like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes do not know anything about time travel. Like they don't even think it's possible. But when Candace Owens says it is possible and Nick Fuentes makes fun of her for saying it's possible, it's like the end result of that, like the white hats love to do, is inspiring a bunch of people to go look it up. And then maybe they find my website, who knows? Or maybe they find the QM and they learn about all the secret projects from the Q key, going all the way back to the beginning. So the first big segment here is Trump at the WEF. He was on fire. Now, he started his speech a little more demurely, sounded like he may be a little tired. He was kind of using his Batman voice, the scratchy, like low, you know, it wasn't like a rally speech where he's really booming. It was kind of like the Batman voice. And so I was like, what's going on? Like, did he not get any sleep on this flight? Why did the flight have to turn around? Like no one, well, they've said it was an electrical issue, which is a little bit sketchy because, you know, obviously Air Force One is probably like the most well-serviced airplane on the planet. So what really happened, we may never know. But either way, it was a little bit strange and concerning that the plane turned back and then took a doomsday plane. And maybe that was the symbolism of switching from Air Force One to, I think they said it was a doomsday plane that he took to Davos. And so it's like he's bringing the doom to Davos, essentially, is maybe what the symbolism was there. Oh, and then, of course, you know, he arrives at exactly 1:07 p.m. in Switzerland when he was walking off the plane. So it's like, if he hadn't turned back and taken a different plane, he wouldn't have arrived at 1:07. So maybe that was part of it. But it's like, it's unfathomable. It is because of Project Looking Glass that all of this whole administration and this whole secret operation is working just like clockwork, nailing so many different timestamps and numerology references. But essentially, he was on fire. He was dropping truth bombs left and right. I see in the chat that the Davos speech felt like bitch slapping while grandstanding. Yes, it was beautiful. Like I said, first off, like I felt very well represented. It's like he's telling all these people to their face that, you know, they're idiots, essentially, which, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say they're stupid or idiots, but, you know, they're evil geniuses. That was, the idiots was mainly in relation to energy policy and building windmills and buying windmills from China, which China's happy to sell, but, you know, they don't actually use them themselves as an energy source. Jumping ahead a little bit here, but I just basically have a whole list of quotes from Trump, and, you know, he kind of kicked it off talking about it's the World Economic Forum, so how well our economy is doing, which, you know, I might question a little bit, especially as a small business, but I do think that this administration is building up the economy the foundation of the economy, to really launch it into the stratosphere, maybe like a little bit later into year 2 and year 3 and 4 of this administration, bringing all these factories from overseas back home. It does take time and it takes build up. And once those are up and running, they will be making a lot of jobs here domestically. And hopefully that will increase consumer confidence, and then small businesses will start doing better again. It's also on the energy front. He's already brought down energy prices, some since Biden. And with the acquisition of Venezuela, like that could potentially bring them down even more. I mean, what I'm really hoping for is the energy breakthrough, some type of new energy technology other than fossil fuels. Well, they're not really fossil fuels, what we know now in conspiracy realm, but oil and gas is really what's driving the energy now, and coal is the most reliable sources. But even in his Davos speech, he talked about the most modern innovations in nuclear power, which he says he's warmed up to. But we know that there's even, it's crazy how, having done the energy map in 2019, and even just I learned about the tokamak reactors, the plasma fusion reactors, the international projects, ITER, and variations of that in China and a lot of different other places, essentially harnessing fusion energy. It's crazy these things are never talked about on the world stage when, these international projects are ongoing and even having some success. You read every now and then like, oh, China's fusion reactor produced this much power for this many seconds. And it's like, they really can't keep it going. I don't know about that. But it's really just the energy monopoly, the old Rockefeller via Rothschild energy monopoly that doesn't want us figuring out that energy is not limited, or it shouldn't be limited on this planet, and we shouldn't have to pay for it. Even right here at this home, my energy bill for January was up $100 from what it was in December, and it wasn't even any colder. So I'm like, how do we use $100 more energy in January versus December? We had, here in Cincinnati, our weather is quite strange. We had a really cold patch. I think that was like early December. And then like 2 weeks ago, it was like 50 degrees. And now, we are going to be on the edge of this big cold front coming through the south. And we're expecting, in the teens and, like 10 and the 1-digit numbers this weekend. And so I'll understand if the energy builds up a little more next month or for this month, but it just doesn't seem to make sense. It's like these smart meters too. It's like you can't really track them. They charge you whatever they want, and then there's no recourse. And so you either have to like have your own energy or just put up with whatever they want to charge you. And hopefully that's all going to change eventually. But anyways, Trump is saying that the United States is in the midst of a fast and dramatic economic turnaround, the biggest in the country's history. And he made a point that when America booms, the entire world booms. He said they've had 52 all-time high records in the stock market since his term 2 began. And he tells all the foreign leaders that the USA is keeping the world afloat, saying, frankly, many parts of our world are being destroyed and the leaders don't even understand what's happening. And the ones that do understand won't do anything to stop it. And that sounds like a reference to migration policy as well as energy policy. He says, certain places in Europe are not even recognizable anymore. We can argue, but there's no argument. I love Europe, but it's not headed in the right direction. Ooh, to come to Europe and say these things. It's a little bit ironic too, because, they're in Davos in Switzerland, which you may or may not know is one of the countries in Europe with a very strict immigration policy. And so it's like all the elites have their little havens in Switzerland and Liechtenstein and these like tiny little countries like Luxembourg, or what's the one in between France and Spain, or France and Denmark. It's like with the smallest countries have the strictest immigration policies. And lo and behold, look, there's not as much crime in those places. And then the bigger ones, France, Germany, and England, they're like, third world, come on in. So I think that the quote on the screen here is one of his most important quotes from the speech, which is really what is the core of the issue that we're having now in, the second big topic of this video, which is talking about ICE and these protests against ICE. Is it good for the country? Should we have an open door policy for immigrants? He said, the situation in Minnesota reminds us that the West cannot mass import foreign cultures which have failed to ever build a successful society of their own. It's common sense. I mean, that's why I've loved Trump from the beginning, because so much of what he says is just common sense. And so much of what we've been fed for all the presidencies before Trump have just been pure lies and propaganda. Even, saying things that aren't even true, but then not even doing them. I mean, now Trump definitely says the right things in a lot of these speeches. Whether they're really doing them or not is another question. I think, the deportations are happening, maybe not at the pace some of us would like, but I think, it's promises made, promises kept, a lot of this. And where it's not kept, it's because of judges and leftists and, people trying to derail this agenda, like all these Karens that are just impeding ICE. It's not protesting what they're doing, it's impeding law enforcement, which is a big difference than protesting. So it's just nice to hear truth spoken on the world stage like this. And, he's their most prominent speaker. There's no other speaker at WEF that was more anticipated and more impactful than Donald Trump. And so it's like, this is the message being broadcast to the whole Western world. And, China and Russia are not even participating in the WEF anymore. Russia has their own St. Petersburg Economic Forum, which is essentially the replacement of WEF. Now, Russia has been more involved in WEF in the past, but not so much these days since the Ukraine war and Putin becoming persona non grata for all of Europe. Another quote from Trump from his speech. Virtually all the so-called experts predicted my plans to end this failed model would trigger a global recession and runaway inflation, and we have proven them wrong. Many Western governments foolishly turned their backs on everything that makes nations rich, powerful, and strong. And speaking specifically about energy, I already mentioned how he bashed wind energy and the people that utilize it. He essentially said that energy should make money, not lose money. And of course that's true. Of course that's true. Windmills, not to mention the visual environmental impact and the birds and the eagles that die as a result of them, they don't make even any money. They're an expense to the taxpayer. They require maintenance and replacement parts, unfortunately. It's quite a shift, because I've always been a little bit of an environmentalist myself, but have to be realistic about these things. I just even saw in Cincinnati where I live, like there's a big, 100-acre space where they're like going to build solar panels in Cincinnati. And I'm like, I used to be like all about the solar panels but now I'm like, well, if they don't make money, if it's not logical, does it make sense? Does it make sense? I still like the idea of solar panels on roofs. That seems like a good place to put them, man. I love that Tesla manufactures those solar roof tiles, but to be clearing big plots of land for solar panels, I'm just not sure. They get covered in snow, they get covered in dust, they require a lot of maintenance. Did they end up making money or losing money is the bottom line. And Trump delivered a pretty thinly veiled threat to the entire world, talking about the exotic weapon systems that the United States now possesses, really in reference to the ones used in Venezuela to supposedly disable all of Maduro's guards, which has been said to be either a sonic weapon or a microwave weapon. Resulting in bleeding from vomiting and bleeding from the orifices. So people have speculated that that's one of those two types of weapons, which is not even that exotic, to be honest. If we're going to talk about exotic weapons, they have teleportation, they have dematerialization. They have all kinds of things that is not even ever publicly discussed. But like Trump said, we have weapons of warfare I can't even talk about. 2 weeks ago, they saw weapons that nobody had even heard of. We've heard of them. They weren't able to fire one shot at us. They said, what happened? They were discombobulated. They pressed the trigger and nothing happened. They said, what the hell is going on? Those defense systems were made by Russia and China, and they're going to go back to the drawing board, I guess. So I would say not only do we have microwave and sonic weapons, but cyber weapons is a big one. What do we have digitally that we can hack into other systems and simply turn them off? That's a big concern. Even for us, there has been concerns in the past with past administrations selling technology to China, buying technology from China, buying chips from China that go into our airplanes and stuff. There has been a big concern that some of those may have back doors that, should we go to war with China specifically, they could simply, hack into the back end of our equipment and turn it off mid-flight. So hopefully that has been addressed in the Pentagon. When he talks about rebuilding our military, part of that could have been possibly closing the back doors to China and possible adversaries that have been opened by previous treasonous administrations. Things like the uranium one deal that Hillary did as well, sharing nuclear material with potential adversaries. It's all treason. So then Trump obviously did a segment on Greenland, and actually I had AI create this image, which I'm pretty proud of Greenland as the entire island as a golf course. Now, of course, this is not to scale. This is not geologically accurate, but it's just kind of for fun. And you'll see that in the video's thumbnail. It's I did this as a meme on Twitter. It was well, what's Greenland so worried about? And it's this is what they're worried about. Their entire country becoming a giant golf course. I thought that was pretty cute. But I mean, look, it's Trump. He turns all his properties into a beautiful high-end luxury place. Most of Greenland is completely uninhabited. Potentially we could even do some terraforming there. I don't know if you have to have the ice there, what that would do to there's not that much even probably natural life there other than polar bears. But, it's a big island. It's the size of the whole big midsection of our country and predominantly uninhabited. I don't know if any of you guys have looked up the population of Greenland or where the actual cities are, but there's literally only a handful of cities around the perimeter of this island and literally nothing on the entire interior. So I find that quite strange. I mean, it's not the best living conditions because it's, I think, cold year round, but I guess there's probably a lot of area in the northern parts of our world that are uninhabited just because of the year-round temperatures so low. But the fact that there's no cities on the interior of Greenland is a little bit strange. I would say, well, there's been all kinds of speculation about, oh, there's a crashed UFO there that has advanced technology, but now we've had our base there for long enough. And I think having a base there, obviously there's not Danes guarding all across the interior, so we've had plenty of time to explore and extract whatever may be there, unless maybe there are secret governments or secret Danes guarding it. It's not like the Danes are sitting there enjoying this advanced UFO technology. But anyways, whether it's minerals or alien technology, Trump wants it. And I think he made a pretty good case for it. And it's America has expanded many times in the past. A lot of people have this attitude the map of the world today is never going to change. And if it does change, whoever changed it is Hitler. But, the reality is that all of these borders and lines are essentially imaginary, made up, only on paper, and they can change at any time. Imagine these liberals, what if these liberals lived in 13 colonies? They'd be you can't win that Revolutionary War. You can't separate from England. Like, you can't make that Louisiana Purchase. You can't have that Oregon Trail. You can't have that Texas and Mexico war. Like, they have no survival instinct. Like, they literally want to crawl into an African colony and be executed. We're going to get to that, though. Trump made some very interesting comments. I would say this is the second most interesting comment he made in his speech at Davos, when he talked about credit card interest rates. And he said, the profit margin for credit card companies now exceeds 50%, and they charge Americans interest rates of 28 and 30%. Whatever happened to usury? The fact that he said whatever happened to usury, it's like, that is a term you are not supposed to use. Somebody, like the ADL, there was a time when the ADL would say that even using the term usury is anti-Semitic, even though it's something that's written in the Bible. And, well, I would say most people today don't even know what it means. Or most people, unless you're a conspiracy theorist, you don't know what it essentially means. Lending money on interest. And the Bible explicitly prohibits lending money on interest. If you lend someone money, according to the Bible, according to Christian morals, you should get back the same amount of money that you lent them, except maybe if accounted for inflation, perhaps, if it's a very long-term loan. But just even to charge interest is against the Christian faith, and that's why mostly only Jews do it. So it's something that's more associated with Jewish banking policy. But of course, you know, all these credit card companies and mortgage companies, it's all run by Jews. So he talked about drug prices, which, you know, so a lot of this was review. It's like a review of his first year, which we've talked about in all of these videos before, but getting the U.S. the most favorite nation drug prices. On crypto, he said the U.S. is still the crypto capital of the world. Signed the Genius Acts. Like I said, hopes to sign the next legislation soon. Okay, this was the one thing where he could have almost said XRP, but the quote was Bitcoin, all of them. So, you know, at least he said all of them, but it's like, he's still on this, like, can't say XRP, even though it's obviously like the chosen one. No representative from Bitcoin at WEF. So then he mentioned, like I said before, homes are for people, and we will never become a nation of renters. Talking about his recent executive order banning BlackRock from buying single-family homes. So, I mean, that was a boom, because, you know, he's saying that right to Larry Fink, who's now the chairman of the WEF. BlackRock is the primary company guilty of buying these single-family homes, driving the housing market prices way up, making them unaffordable for my generation and the younger generations as well. So that was also very much in contradiction to the previous WEF tenet of you will own nothing and be happy. Like, that was the whole thing since at least 2020, or probably even before 2020, that was Klaus Schwab's motto for the future of our world, was you will own nothing and be happy. And BlackRock buying all these single family homes is a perfect example of that. Buying homes and then renting them back to Americans is like the epitome of you will own nothing and be happy. And nobody was happy about it other than the BlackRock shareholders. And so now, concluding Trump's speech with the biggest news drop in the speech, possibly you call it the biggest announcement, saying the people who helped rig 2020 will be getting prosecuted soon. That's breaking news. He even said that's breaking news. So, of course, this is straight out of Q lore. This is what we've been expecting. I mean, I find it a little bit frustrating that, like, the big expectation is related to 2020, which was in itself part of the Q operation. You know, there's plenty of things that these people have done wrong even before 2017 and 2016. Like, these were, you know, child killing Satanists not to mention rigging every election in the past. But, you know, if 2020 is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, so let it be. But that was, you know, I do not think he'd be hyping it up to this degree and even saying things like that if we were never going to see prosecutions. And, you know, we still have 𝕯𝖚𝖚 saying, 2020, it's not over yet. So, you know, it's coming. It's just like, it feels like we're constipated at this point. It's been coming down the pipe for so long, but it is coming nonetheless. And you can rest assured that it will happen. As well as, I'm not sure, you know, I thought we would have seen the executive order related to paper ballots by now, but that may be coming as well. I'm not sure, you know, Nino asks Juan about that every time. I'm still subscribed to Nino's Corner. Like, I see all the videos on YouTube as well as the ones on the private platform, especially when 𝕯𝖚𝖚 speaks, because he's obviously the highest level person in this movement that has an insider take on things. And he's still talking about that, but he's not giving like a deadline of when this executive order will come. But, you know, the midterms are approaching and the strategy may be changing. We've been seeing, you know, some tweets from Trump and hints about the midterms may not even happen. And even just today, there's talk again about a fourth term. And so why wouldn't the midterms happen? Or he said something like, maybe we don't need midterms. We'll just have to see, you know, whether it's going to be an executive order that fixes the election system, or for some reason, you know, maybe a national emergency that the elections don't happen. I'm pretty confident it will not be another rigged election where Democrats regain control of the House and impeach Trump. Like, that's just, to me, that's not really in the cards at this point. Like, we've already played that game in 2020. And, you know, we're getting to the point where the Qs and even the MAGA normies will probably stage like a 1776 style revolution if these psychotic Democrats ever get back in control. So after Trump's speech, there was a little somewhat unexpected Q&A where he was asked about the protests in Minneapolis, in which he referred to them as fake protesters or fake protests done by agitators and professional paid protesters. So that was interesting to me. That seems to confirm a lot of, you know, the theory that we've been hearing in the alt media that these are not organic protests. And it's like, it's pretty obvious at this point. And I mean, this is leading me into the Minneapolis subject, but there was footage of a protest in Minneapolis where the leader of the libtards was actually shouting Q-isms. So the leader of the libtard protests, the anti-ICE protests, was saying stuff like, where we go when we go all, I forget which other ones he said, but it was like 2 or 3 different of the blatant Q expressions. And so once again, it seems like a lot of those protests are, you know, whether they're controlled through some kind of a Soros organization that has been captured, or this is a straight up completely like white hat. Like, I'm not sure what the chain of command is. Like, if white hats control the Soros organization and the Soros organization organizes the protests, or if it's straight up like, you know, white hat CIA actually organizing these protests. And then of course, you know, there's the just libtard bystanders involved as well. Like, when you see Karen in her Lululemon yoga outfit trying to get right in between ICE and what they're doing, trying to arrest these illegal immigrants, you know, I think some of these, just the way people behave, you can tell that they are actually organically fucking retarded. But the ones that are actually organized with, like, you know, aggregating thousands of people or hundreds of people, having someone with like a megaphone that's organizing it, the thing in the church, like with Don Lemon, like some of these events are clearly staged. And I would even say the Renee Good situation, I believe that was staged. I don't believe that was even real, never mind organic. Slowly transitioning into Minneapolis here. One of the other things that Trump said during the Q&A was that we are not going to have World War III. If I wasn't elected, it could have evolved to that. And so it's basically like this speech was like confirming everything that I and others in the truth movement have been talking about for years now. And so it's validation, it's confirmation that we've been, following the accurate information, and that we've been reading this administration correctly. Because, some of these things, we were talking about before even Trump talked about it on Truth Social, and then he talks about it on Truth Social, and then he states it in the World Economic Forum. And so it's just like, once again, ahead of the curve. Confirmation. So before we move on to Minneapolis, oh wait, I have one more image. This is an image of the other NATO countries attempting to defend Greenland with like, if you're just listening to this, it's an image of like 8 NATO soldiers looking out over a hill of like an entire multi-legion U.S. Army coming to Greenland. So it's like, if we want it, they cannot stop us. And so after Trump's speech, like in his speech, he was pretty much talking about wanting to like annex the whole island. After that, he met with some NATO representatives, or the head of NATO, and in press conferences after that meeting, he was talking about they're very close to an agreement. Now, I've heard that agreement involves having quote-unquote sovereign U.S., multiple quote-unquote sovereign U.S. military bases in Greenland. So not necessarily owning it, but expanding our military presence and, expanding the legal status of our military presence there. So that could be the solution. I personally would like to see it as a state. It's like we haven't got a new state in 50 years. It looks like it'd be a nice property to have. Like, I don't know. So, but of course, like, I don't necessarily even want to visit there, but, they have some cute little towns, but it needs an upgrade, to be honest. And so that's that with Greenland. It's like they're approaching a deal, but it's not looking like statehood anymore, but it could look like Trump's going to accomplish his military objectives. And he still claims it's not about the minerals. So now the other big thing, which I don't really have a picture of the second news conference, but there was a second big presentation, let's call it. I'm not sure if it was on the main stage or in America's little building there in the little Davos village, like a private American party. But there was a public presentation regarding and a signing of a deal regarding the Board of Peace. That is, well, the definition of what that is seems to be expanding very rapidly. The Board of Peace was originally Trump's plan of who would run Gaza and who would be involved in the redevelopment of Gaza. Now Trump is taking questions from reporters and saying things like, or the reporter, first of all, I believe the reporter asking him questions is part of the White House. Like, it did not feel like an organic question, but the reporter asked him, like, is the Board of Peace going to replace the UN? And Trump said, essentially, maybe. So I was kind of taken aback by that, because from the original scope of what I understood the Board of Peace to be, to saying it may replace the UN is a pretty big jump. I mean, I thought the Board of Peace was only related to Gaza, and now we're talking about the Board of Peace replacing the UN? Is like, what? So there's things going on behind the scenes, I think. And I actually just found this image you're seeing here, which says Board of Peace is dsara. I found this on Twitter just right before I went on this video. And so there's no confirmation of this. However, some things seem to be adding up that this may be the truth here. And if you have studied my dsara map and the original tenants, or the however many, I forget how many bullet points it was, but however many bullet points there are of the original dsara plan, one of the very first and most fundamental tenets of dsara is that all wars must end. And so possibly to be joining this Board of Peace could be, committing to ending wars, and therefore joining the Board of Peace may become eventually synonymous to 𝕯𝖊𝖚𝖚. Speaking of 𝕯𝖊𝖚, and we're going to come to some financial news a little bit later here, not necessarily good financial news, but what is good financial news possibly is that it was announced that the U.S. has completed its withdrawal from Iraq. And now we do still have military bases there, but perhaps there were troops outside of the military bases that were still considered essentially occupying Iraqi territory. That has ended as of this week. So I guess you could say like the Iraq war is finally 100% ended. And there was a photo of Trump with an Iraqi dinar on the table in front of him, as well as a few coins. And people are speculating that between like the permanent or the final completion of this withdrawal of U.S. troops in Iraq and this picture of Trump with the dinar, it could be a signal that we could be seeing some price action in the Iraqi dinar in the near future. And if you've studied this 𝕯𝖊𝖚 plan, you know, the three big financial tenets of 𝕯𝖊𝖚 is the move to asset-backed currencies, gold and silver-backed currency, which Russia has already completed. We're waiting on the U.S. to do that portion. The ascension of these ISO 20002 cryptocurrencies to become, you know, internationally integrated as a standard for international money transfer and used in the respective industries that they've been designed for. And the third tenet being the revaluation of global currencies, including a massive rise in price of some of the least valued currencies in the world as essentially a reconciliation for the wars that they have endured that have debased those currencies. And so some of the big ones expected to rise being Iraqi dinar, Indonesian rupee, Vietnamese dong. A debatable one is the Zimbabwe ZIM. I'm not personally invested in that one because I think that one just devalued a little bit too much to be salvageable. But these other currencies are still valid, functional national currencies that, you know, their prices are still fluctuating. And so that is a, you know, potential aspect of 𝕯𝖊𝖚. And so keep an eye on the Iraqi dinar as well as XRP, as well as announcements about the Fed. So moving on here, before we get to a little more detailed discussion about Minneapolis, I want to announce that I have completed, let's see if we can get this on a scale that looks good here. I have completed the next major D.S.M.P infographic, which is going to be called the Sovereignty Certificate. And so you are seeing the thumbnail of it for the very first time here on the right. I'm going to keep it small for now. I'm not going to discuss it too much for now. I have ordered the first large print of this, which will be the size of some of these posters behind me. It's designed to be a large print, actually. I'm not sure if I'm even going to be able to sell it as a small handheld print. Actually, I have it right here as well. And, you know, the font is essentially illegible at this size, but it's going to look great as a full-size poster. And so this is not just another artwork from D.S.M.P. This is actually my sovereignty education packet, you could call it. And I'm even considering the main, let me explain just a little bit how this diagram is operating here. It's obviously, or maybe not obviously, but it's inspired by paper currency. That's why it looks the way it does. It's this green tone with like portraits and this architectural framing, which actually the architectural framing is what took the longest of any aspect of this. But I've been so inspired by currency, and I love the way currency looks and the artistic qualities of it, that it's been a goal of mine for a very long time to study that and be able to emulate that style. And so it's called intaglio engraving style, which I didn't actually do engraving. I did it all digitally, and even with some assistance from AI, but it took a lot of hand intaglio engraving to complete this as well. But essentially the two main informational portions of this are a glossary and a comparison of essentially how an NPC or your straw man lives his life compared to how a sovereign individual lives their life in very different, or in various aspects, such as your legal life, your home life, your vehicular life, your spiritual life. And so that's what that main list is down the center. And we you know, I would have liked to have a little more room here to like add even more data. And so I'm thinking about, when I release this, of having it include a sort of like supplementary information packet where we can actually, it will probably be like most logically presented as like a very basic like Excel sheet. But nobody wants to look at that. So it's like taking dry data and making it artistic is the whole thing with Deep State Mapping Project. You know, anything can be like just a list format, but this is a way of having like a list that's presented in like a way that you can actually present as art. But for some of these things, it's like, it might be better to actually just have it in like, you know, a pamphlet or like a packet format. And so this may end up being kind of like the sovereignty like packet as well. We have several packets already. But anyways, I'm trying to figure out exactly how we're going to sell this. It'll definitely be available as a poster, but you know, it may come with some supplemental things. Like some of our artworks, like the world hierarchy pyramid down here, you know, that comes with a supplemental insert that essentially has like the essays about the diagram. And so the sovereignty certificate may be somewhat like that. It'll come with a little bit of additional printed information. So that is coming on the horizon. I'm very excited to see the poster. Probably by my next video, you'll be seeing the poster like right here, replacing Ashtar, or maybe, I'm not sure. It'll kind of blend into the green wall, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll put it right here on the floor in front of the credenza. But that's on the way. And as soon as I see the poster sample myself, we will have that available on the website as, well, maybe we'll sell it as print on demand, as like a preview, and then we'll eventually be getting like the bulk of them in stock. So I'm really excited about it. I was working on this very intensely for 3 months. So you're going to see the level of detail like when you got up close to it. Like first got the idea for this way back in May, at the Trump Doral Expo, the Charlie Ward Expo at Trump Doral. I was having conversations with people like at the bar, and like I got a download of essentially like this diagram's basic layout, and then that evolved over time. So it's like these diagrams take a long time. You know, the download came in May, did a few different pencil sketches between May and October, and then really began working on the actual digital file of this in October, and just completed it. 1/17/2026 is the date of the final version that I've ordered. And so that's very exciting. We haven't had a major diagram released like this since, let's see, like almost 2024 was like the Infinite Life Vortex. The Maestro Map was a fairly big diagram release, but it wasn't as, I wouldn't consider the Maestro Map like one of our most highly complex ones. However, we are still doing a promotional focus on the Maestro Map, and we have a new reel that I want to share with you guys right now.
Hey, Dad. If Trump's whole thing is peace through strength, why are we invading Venezuela?
It's 5D chess, son. It's not always what you see on the surface. You gotta think 5 steps ahead. Venezuela and Smartmatic helped steal the 2020 election. We're also cutting off China from their source of oil so that they can't start World War III. They were gonna be our adversary in the deep state's original plan if Hillary would have won. We're coming to this point that we call the precipice. We need to have a near-death experience for the country, which would be a DEFCON 1 event, a nuclear launch, so that Trump can transfer control and data from the SES to the continuity of government operation that him and the White Hats are in control of. Got it?
Well, I thought he was America first. Seems like he's doing a lot of foreign interference. My teacher said he's Israel first.
Son, we're saving Israel for last. Have you ever heard of keeping your friends close and your enemies even closer? If he made it too obvious that Israel was controlling the USA through AIPAC, he would just be proving all the liberals right who call him Orange Hitler. He has to be strategic. He's reeling them in, earning their trust, and when the time is just right, it's gonna be a rug pull. Israel wanted to annex the Gaza Strip and turn it into part of Israel, but Trump has squashed the Greater Israel Project. Trust me, the Maestro has a plan. So that was our latest reel promoting the Maestro Map, which is available at dsmp.io. And check out this other 1-minute promo of all the different things we offer at dsmp.io. If you want to support the new Templars, you gotta go shop at dsmp.io. And it will also help the Great Awakening to acquire these artworks, share them with friends, display them in your home, show that you are informed and inform others at the same time, thereby helping the Great Awakening, help us defeat the deep state and get to the new Earth 5D future that we all want to enjoy.
Truth seekers, are you ready to uncover the secrets they don't want you to know? At dsmp.io, we're not just a store. We're a portal to the unknown. Prints and posters that unveil hidden truths, from ancient mysteries to modern cover-ups. Fill your space with tapestries woven with cosmic secrets. Tap into the energy of hand-selected crystals to awaken your mind. Explore exclusive packets packed with forbidden knowledge. Cleanse your body and spirit with products designed to strip away the toxins of a corrupted world. In the chaos of today, we give you the tools to stay sharp and to stay awakened. This is more than shopping. This is a movement. Step through the portal. Discover the truth. dsmp.io. Truth disguised as art.
All right, so that is dsmp.io, link in the description. And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. We would really appreciate your support. It's actually the whole reason we do videos, is to, keep this boat afloat and, help the planet as well. So that is dsmp.io. And now let's talk about these crazy ass kamikaze Karens a little bit. We're already an hour in. And so it's like, that's part of the reason I didn't make a video last week, because Minneapolis seemed to be the only real news that was coming out. And it's just a sad state to see for the USA and for the far left. This image has a caption that looks like a news article saying that over half of Republicans believe that 𝕯𝖚𝖘 shooting was justified. I would be in that camp. I would say the cop maybe used a little bit of excessive force, because I haven't even heard anyone discuss this, but he's standing in front of her car when she hits the gas. I don't even know how he pulled out his gun that quickly and got a shot straight through her front windshield. That shot, I would say, was justified. Then there was 3 other shots, with the 4th being literally firing right into the side of her head, through the driver's window. That one, I would say, maybe was not quite as justified. However, you're in the moment. Cops like to unload their whole clip. She did drive at him. She used her car as a deadly weapon. So that's how she ended up. And so, of course, I believe that the whole event was staged. And I saved this picture in particular because in this picture, you can see the T-Rex in the background. I mentioned in the last video, and probably a lot of you have heard by now, that there was a literal T-Rex, might even be to scale T-Rex, in someone's yard, literally across the street from where this event happened. And in the yard, either next door or 2 houses over, they have a life-size great white shark in the yard as well. And so it's what the hell? Of all the blocks in the USA where a protester could have been shot, it happens to happen on a block that has 2 different movie monsters, you could call them. Are we watching a movie? I believe we are. The T-Rex being obviously Jurassic Park, the shark being obviously Jaws. And like I said before, the shark even being referenced to the video, the the MAGA hype video that Trump posted on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, which I played as the intro to my last video. And so there are these telltale signs that what we're seeing is not necessarily organic. And I was saying in my last video, it concerns me slightly that the white hats are using the deep state's propaganda techniques to sway the American public. But I believe they have a benevolent goal in the end. And so what do we say? Sometimes it takes a little trauma to deprogram the leftists. It's not looking like therapy. It's looking like they're getting worse and worse. And I'm not sure exactly where this is headed. You know, some would say civil war. These people are so deranged, like they could not even manage a civil war if they wanted to. I mean, we're talking about the anti-gun, leftist, queer, trans, having a mental breakdown over being misgendered party here. Now, if the right wanted to have a civil war, that might be something to be concerned about because we are the gun holders. Probably we are the more militant side between the two. You know, I believe if the right wanted to have a civil war or a revolution, they could cause some serious damage. Now, the left can cause damage too. They're already destroying their own cities. However, in terms of like a serious civil war, they don't have what it takes. So what is really going on here? I mean, we've been seeing video after video of leftist breakdown. They seem to enjoy making these videos where they're crying on camera, somewhat proving their leftist ideology. A lot of these videos, they don't even talk. They're just like crying with like their mouth taped shut and like "Renee Good" like written on the tape or some stupid shit like that. But I'm like, how far is this going to go? How far gone are these people? Did they realize that these are illegal immigrants, many of them having criminal records? Like, why are they defending like people that some of them are rapists, some of them are murderers? Like, they just defend any of them. Like, they have no idea what these people's criminal records are. Like, they just inherently do not trust anything ICE is doing and are impeding, like I said, impeding law enforcement. This is not protest. This is impeding law enforcement. You know, if you're going to say that January 6th was impeding congressional proceeding, like, what do you think? They're not just standing on the side of the road, like holding a sign. They are getting up in these ICE people's faces, insulting them, cursing at them, blocking roads perpendicularly with their cars, putting down water in front of where ICE is trying to pull out of their headquarters to make the road like slick and have, you know, cause vehicular crashes. So it's just completely deranged, I would say. And they have so much sympathy for these foreigners that they don't even know, many of which have been committing fraud, defrauding the American taxpayer, defrauding the welfare system, and becoming quite wealthy as a result of it. These foreigners have no love for white people, for liberal white women. Like, they'll probably, you know, rape them as soon as the cameras turn off, some of them. And so, like, what's going really on here? And I was just thinking, like, you know, you have to remember that all of these liberals that are on this anti-ICE crusade are vaccinated, are multiple rounds vaccinated. So you could even, you know, scientifically perceive them as a different species than us, the unvaccinated. And I wonder, like, could the vaccine have lowered their intelligence? Could it possibly have increased their aggression? Could it have caused them to simply bypass logic at this stage? And I would say that's a distinct possibility. These are highly deranged people, these leftists, these blue-haired, obese dykes. Many of them are depressed, and they're very open about it. Many of them are suicidal and like to flaunt that fact to elicit sympathy from their friends and family. And because of that, when they engage in these anti-ICE demonstrations, they may actually be attempting to exploit a crisis in order to martyr themselves, to make themselves feel some kind of validation or higher significance in their life. and essentially die by what would amount to an ICE-assisted suicide. So it's just a very sad state. You know, I'm really hoping the mainstream media moves past this story soon because I'm really tired of hearing about it. But I stand with ICE 100,000%. Now, I mean, I've seen maybe like one or two situations. And of course, when you see a situation on social media, you don't even know if it's true. Sometimes this account called Occupy Democrats pops up on my Twitter feed, and I'm like, well, this is clearly propaganda. Like, they could be lying. You don't know if it's true or not. Though I saw one situation where it's like they were arresting a man that was about to come home to his birthday party, and I was like, well, that's kind of sad. You know what I mean? Like, I wish he could have like at least had his birthday party and then got deported. But at the end of the day, you know, you cannot expect to come into a country illegally and like suffer no legal repercussions. Like, it's insanity that we have even given these people welfare and places to live and let them just become parasites on the tax system. Like, never mind these daycares and whatnot that are defrauding the American people. And Nick Shirley was in Congress just yesterday testifying about these daycare fraud schemes that he's discovered in Minnesota, talking about how there's probably even worse fraud schemes related to immigration in other states, specifically calling out California, which obviously has one of the biggest immigration problems of anywhere, as well as homeless problems. So kudos to Nick Shirley for uncovering so much of that. But, you know, this is the type of person that, like the pink hair with like the deep brown roots, they just love getting arrested, it seems. And then you have Tim Walz, who's inciting all of this, who seems like he definitely has some kind of a legal repercussion coming his way very soon. So that's about it on Minneapolis. I know some people have been noting, and some of the other channels I listen to are noting that, you know, it's a little bit strange that Minneapolis is the only city we're really hearing very much about when there's obviously so many immigrant problems like in California and I'm sure Texas and Atlanta and other places where you would expect to be seeing like nationwide protests. Like with the George Floyd protests, it erupted nationwide almost instantaneously. And now it seems to be very focused on a few selective spots that are receiving all the media attention. And again, it feels a little bit inorganic, like this is some part of some kind of a white hat operation to bring in the National Guard. So once again, you know, the idea of patriots in full control. Okay, we got a couple chats on Rumble. ICE saved my life. My smuggler was caught. Bunch of U.S. victims were in ICE detention. See, ICE saves lives. There you go. I'm thinking that there needs to be, well, it was Fashion Week recently in Paris and Milan, one of the fashion weeks, and there was a lot of third world looking models, and I was thinking that someone should do a collection inspired by ICE and like have even like a presentation where like ICE is like doing Arrest on the Runway would be a great inspiration for a collection, a controversial one. And then I could also see some really good like ICE like couples Halloween costumes happening this year for Halloween. So they start planning Halloween now. Everyone will get it for sure, and it'll be a hit. So couple like we're getting pretty deep in this video, an hour and 15 minutes. I want to wrap this up pretty soon here, and there's not too much more, but there was a situation where Trump went to the Ford plant and gave the finger to an employee heckling him. That made a big splash in the media. I liked this picture of Trump, Mark Rubio, and JD Vance in the 19th century or 18th century apparel, like in the pose you see the meme usually. Trump finally got his Nobel Peace Prize, a second-hand Nobel Peace Prize from this woman from Venezuela who won it. I believe she was like the opposition leader in Venezuela. I'm not sure exactly why she won it, but she donated her Peace Prize to Trump, which is interesting, ironic. You know, it's like, I'm glad he finally got his Nobel Peace Prize, even though it's not actually from the Nobel Peace Prize Council. So the one other financial news here was that on 1/20/26, there was articles talking about Japanese bonds hit a record high, sending shockwaves through the global debt markets. We've heard repeatedly from 𝕯𝖚𝖚 as well as other financial analysts that a big global financial collapse that is looming will begin in Japan. And when we see Japanese bonds hitting these record highs, this could happen at any time. And, remember, when did we do the black swan from the Japan market crash video? Was that in like fall 25 or 24? Like, all the years are blending together now. It's like we've had, conspiracy theorists have been talking about like the global financial collapse for years and years and years, and it never seems to happen. But I do believe it will happen eventually. And this article talking about Japan's bond yields are once again indicating that this could be on the horizon, saying Japanese bond yields have soared to record highs, helping push up government borrowing costs around the world. So again, this article is, kind of confirming some of the conspiracy theories that what happens in Japan, for whatever reason, I couldn't give you a detailed explanation of why, but it spreads globally. Japan seems to be the forerunner for financial situations. The yield on Japan's 40-year bond rose above 4% for the first time since its introduction in 2007. Finance Minister Satsuki Kayayama said, "I'd like everyone in the market to calm down." Investors dumped Japanese government bonds after Prime Minister Takeshi called a snap election and pledged costly tax cuts on food should she win. That has sent the value of bonds plunging and the yield soaring. Borrowing costs around the world rose, with the 10-year UK gilt yield heading towards 4.5%. I believe I've seen more recent news saying that the Japanese Prime Minister was announcing like the dissolution of the government. I'll have to double check on that one. But to fast forward here to our Maha news, I do want to mention this. I want everyone to be, as you know, one of our most recent diagrams at D.S.M.P is the seed oil map. Seed oils is something we should all be becoming more conscious about avoiding if we want to live longer, be healthier, and not be a fat ass. And so there has been a lot of dispute lately on social media regarding eggs and the brand Vital Farms eggs, which have been said by some to contain a lot of linoleic acid because these chickens are being fed soy and corn feed. Even though they're considered pasture raised, you have to look into what they're being fed, because just because they're in a pasture, I'm guilty of this. Like, I'm sorry to admit. And I wasn't eating Vital Farms eggs, but even more embarrassingly, I've been eating Happy eggs, which I thought were good. And then I could tell from the packaging, they probably weren't good for several years now, but I just kept eating them because like I was in denial. And I've become more aware recently that being pasture raised does not mean they're actually eating from a pasture. Like I was telling myself in my head for years now, pasture raised meant they're going around a pasture, pecking the ground, like eating worms. Well, that is not the case. And a lot of these eggs that say pasture raised on the packaging are actually being fed corn and soy. And because they're being fed corn and soy, the actual yolks and eggs themselves have become quite high in linoleic acid, which is the inflammatory acid that makes these seed oils toxic. And so I know this is a very tiny infographic to read here. And by the way, Vital Farms, it started as like a smaller company. It's now like a Fortune 500, or I don't know, Fortune 500, but it's essentially owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. So it's like it's become a publicly traded company. And when that happens, like the quality obviously goes down. However, let me try to zoom in on this as much as I can so you can actually see it with me here. This little infographic at the bottom is showing you the omega-6, which is essentially linoleic acid content of different egg brands. And like starting from the worst at the bottom here is newborn organic. It's like a lot of these are considered organic and pasture raised, but they're feeding these chickens soy and corn. And so their eggs are full of inflammatory omega-6 linoleic acid. But what's interesting here is that Vital Farms is not a singular farm or like a singular even practice of farming. They actually own several different individual farms, and then they all just get packaged as Vital Farms. And so this is getting very confusing that... Now let's see, why are some of these greens? Oh, okay, so the green ones on this list are their soy-free feed, and the red ones are conventional feed, which is soy and corn. So I'm not going to go through this entire list, but it's essentially much more complicated than I originally thought. And the ones I was eating are... they're not even on this list. I don't even see happy eggs, but I'm pretty sure that they're soy, or they're conventional fed. But the thing with Vital Farms is that even if you're getting a Vital Farm eggs, you don't know which Vital Farm owned farm they came from. And I believe you can scan a QR code on the eggs to find that out. But essentially, some of their farms are having much higher omega-6 level eggs than others. And so if you scan their QR code and it's, say, from wild pasture-raised Wild Rose Farm, that's the worst. That's going to be like 23% linoleic acid. But if you scan the QR code and it's from King Farms, that could be one of the lowest omega-6 eggs. And so, this is posted by Seed Oil Scout, which they've devoted their entire existence to figuring out how to avoid seed oils. And so for them to say that, this Vital Farm eggs from King Farms is, the best of all of these, like that's pretty promising. But I believe there's no way to know that unless you literally scan the QR code. And so it's just become so complex. It's very frustrating that, unfortunately, the people that are actually in food production are not always the most healthy people. Like even here at the farmer's market I go to, the farm that serves the one meat producer at our farmer's market here in Cincinnati, it's like, I hate to say this, I'm sure she doesn't watch our videos, but like the woman who is works the matriarch of this family is like, she is not massively obese, but like she is obese. And so it's like these people that are farmers aren't always the most healthy and health conscious type of people, even at like organic farmers markets. And so it's concerning, it's confusing. Which eggs are we supposed to buy? Essentially, for me personally, I've switched to buying, I think they're called Pete and Jerry eggs. Like I'm still so new to it, I'm unfamiliar with even what eggs I'm buying now. But some of the best if you're not trying to guess which farm your Vital eggs came from and scan QR codes, some of the best, most reliable ones are Primal Pastures and Angel Acres. Now, I have never seen either of those brands in any store here in Ohio. But I believe you can order them online and have them delivered. That sounds like a great way to get a bunch of crushed eggs delivered to your house that you paid premium for. But, if you want to be sure, that's one way to be sure, is to go with the Primal Pastures. And everyone else is feeding their fucking chickens seed oils. And so it's just like, how hard has it got to be to just not be fat ass? The one other Maha news, which didn't get me that excited, was that Trump is bringing back whole milk to schools, I think. And so I'm not sure what they were serving up until now, but no sign yet about pasteurization or unpasteurized raw milk being reintroduced, which was what I would be really excited to see, is the legalization of raw milk once again. But maybe that's coming down the road in the future. But this is, one little step forward for now, and we'll see if we can get raw milk approved further down the road. So very last thing on this is this has completely taken over my Twitter feed, which, like I said in the beginning, I'm very disappointed lately with the direction my X feed has been going in the algorithm serving me goy slop. But this is of note. You know, I've always been a sci-fi fan. And the big buzz lately is that the new Star Trek series on Paramount Plus is woke. They have gone woke. The entire crew is like multiracial. There's not a pure white person in sight. And even like the dialogue and the content of the show, like they're showing these people going through like DEI training for Starfleet. It's a complete shit show. Essentially, it's like a woke leftist lesbian shit show. Some of these, a lot of the characters are obese as well. They've been eating the Vital Farm eggs from the worst pasture in the galaxy. And it's like, even when they make them a blue face, it's like they're got to be obese and clearly like black. But the one that's rubbing people the wrong way the worst is this one. And it's not because she's black. Like, we're fine with having black people in Starfleet, or, you know, black Klingons. There's always been black Klingons. But this girl is literally black, obese. I mean, she has braids, which makes her a little more like Hood. I mean, I'm cool with braids. Like, I think braids look... I love the Scary Spice hair. I love the Scary Spice hair on Scary Spice. But the thing is that this girl looks like she has Down syndrome. And so it's like, they're just trying to be so inclusive that they're literally putting people with Down syndrome in charge of driving interstellar starcraft or whatever. I'm not sure what her role is. I refuse to watch this show. Like, I don't watch any TV, to be honest. It's on Paramount Plus. I don't even have, like, the TV for years and years used to be in that corner of this room, and there's no TV anymore. Like, we contemplate and we meditate. But it's just sad to see, you know, it's like they've already done this to Star Wars. Disney's already done this to Star Wars. And now Paramount is wokeifying Star Trek, and they're just getting horrible reviews, horrible ratings, because you don't put a person with Down syndrome like in charge of a starcraft. Like, it's just common sense. And she's obese, so that's that. Not too much more to say about that. Like, I won't be watching it, and it's just another sign of Hollywood in the decline. Well, but let me bring up that for one more. I have one redeeming thing to say about Star Trek, which I got this picture, which someone was saying that their starcraft in the new show like are subpar, but I think the actual like the starcraft in the new Star Trek look really badass. They all have these like floating components to them. So like, I guess they have like engines and things like attached like magnetically to the main craft, and so I think the craft look cool, okay, but the staff on them, there's some questions. So that is the news for now. Hour and 30 minutes in. Great presentation at the World Economic Forum. I would highly suggest everyone watch like the whole speech, because it was just classic Trump. Like I said, it started off a little low-key, a little Batman-esque, but then he really got into his stride like midway through and really delivered a strong message for America with Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessnet and the whole American contingent very well representing the MAGA agenda, rubbing the WEF original globalist agenda in the mud. Read a couple other comments here before we end the video from Tiffany saying we need to take the fluoride out of the water. That would be very nice. I'm very much looking forward to that, as well as raw milk. She stopped watching TV in 2015. Me too. I mean, I stopped watching TV a really long time ago. So people are saying Dylan's products are the best. Thank you very much. We do have the best products. Yeah, I'm really excited for the new poster. I'll hold this up one more time now that we're back to full screen. Again, this is not the site. This is just, it's not even going to have these white margins, but we're going to have the real poster here next week. So sovereignty certificate done. Davos done. The other thing I saw on Twitter right before I started this video was that Trump just got back to Washington, D.C. safely. you know, there was concerns when that flight did a U-turn. It was like, what's going on? Has he had a medical emergency? Like, did they find out there's a threat in Davos? Like, was there an assassination crew like waiting to snipe him when he got off the plane? Thankfully, everything went smoothly in Davos. Well, there actually was a strange smell and people coughing and an evacuation of the main building shortly after Trump spoke, the same day that Trump spoke. And so that was a little bit strange as well. And I still haven't heard what the ultimate word on was about that. Charlie Ward put out a video saying that the people were coughing and having a strange smell because all the globalists had shit their pants after Trump's speech, which, of course, that was in jest. I also heard something that it was a fire-like smell in a nearby hotel, not in the main Davos convention hall, but I guess it was evacuated out of an abundance of caution. So I'm not sure what the smell was. You know, maybe they'll all come down with bubonic plague next week. We'll see, hopefully, other than the American delegation. So that's the news for now. And, you know, MAGA is rolling forward. I think that 2026 is going to be a very, very interesting year to continue monitoring, even though we've been in a little bit of a holding pattern for the past couple of weeks. This year has a lot of promising big events on the way. So hang in there. And don't forget to go to dsmp.io. Start saving up for the sovereignty certificate. And we'll see you guys on the next video. New Templars.
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Welcome to the future of finding you.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.
You'll find out.